Trigonometry. What is trigonometry? Trigonometry, as most people know it, is the study of triangles. That's the idea, because after all, when we hear the word tree, we think of tree. So this is tree. Gono is around side. So metry is measurement. So whenever we hear the word trigonometry, we are talking about triangles. Now, the first question is, what are the trigonometric ratios? Trigonometric ratios are, as we know, referred to as sine and cos. But we usually don't use the word sine or cos. We use the word sine of some angle and cos of some angle. So something like this. So when we say trigonometry, we say sine x or cos x. Now the first question is, why do we use the symbol sine and cos, and where do they come from? First thing is, the word sine and the word cos, they're referred to as the trigonometric ratios. These are called the trigonometric ratios. Now the first thing, we are trying to define trigonometry, and also we need to know what ratios are. When we talk about ratios, we are talking about two things divided. So ratios are two things divided. So when we say the ratio of A to B is A divided by B. So what are trigonometric ratios? Now the sine ratio, first of all, by definition, if you're talking about a triangle, if trigonometry is a three-side measurement, the first thing that comes to mind is a triangle. So if we say this is a right angle triangle, and we know that this is a right angle triangle, so if this is a right angle triangle, then this is the right angle. And one of the most important thing to remember, the side opposite the right angle is called the hypotenuse, which means it is the longest side, because in a right angle triangle the largest angle is 90 degree. So the side opposite the 90 degree is hypotenuse. Now there are two other sides left, but the names of these two sides depend on a reference to the angle. For example, if I am referring to this angle, let me call this angle a pronoun theta. Theta is the Greek letter. It refers to an angle, and it's used a pronoun. Any angle can be called theta. If you're referring to this angle theta, then the angle this and the side opposite to this is called the opposite. So this side opposite this theta, with reference to this angle, this is opposite, and with reference to this angle, this is called adjacent to the angle. So whenever we are referring to an angle, we can refer to the other two sides. So the hypotenuse is fixed, but the other two sides depends on what reference are you giving to the angle. So the name of the angle or the position of the angle is very, very important. On the other hand, if you had considered this angle, then this would be the opposite and this would be the adjacent. So it is extremely important to remember that the reference of the sides, the opposite and the adjacent, are with the angle. So what is the meaning of the word sine x? Well, the word sine x is a shortcut or a mathematical symbol for saying this thing. If it is said, let me use this, if someone says this thing, what is the meaning of sine x? or sine theta, it means divide the opposite side. Now here, when we are talking about the opposite side, this is where sine x coming from. Opposite with respect to what? With a reference to the angle. If the angle, suppose this is theta, this is the angle x, then with reference to this angle, the opposite side of this angle would be called opposite. So divide the opposite side by the hypotenuse. This means the largest side, opposite 90 degree. So the hypotenuse may be fixed, but it is the angle. The sine x means you're dividing the opposite side with the hypotenuse. In other words, it means the sine ratio means ratio of the opposite side to the hypotenuse. So we can say that sine x is equals to opposite by hypotenuse. As a shortcut we can say so. So the mathematical symbol for sine x, sin x, it is actually some sort of an order, some sort of an application. What are you going to do? You're going to divide the opposite side with the hypotenuse. So you're telling which is the opposite by defining this angle. The angle x, anything opposite to this angle, that side will be called opposite, and the hypotenuse is always fixed. Similarly, if someone says what is the meaning of the mathematical term cos x, so what is cos x, if that is the question after this, so cos x is the order, divide the adjacent by the hypotenuse. So the adjacent side is this and the hypotenuse. So cos x is going to be referred to as the adjacent by the hypotenuse. This ratio of the adjacent to the hypotenuse side is called as cos x. You can remember it like ka. C for cos, adjacent by hypotenuse, so ka. Now these two are called the trigonometric ratios. Why ratio? Because the two sides are divided. But the name of the angle is extremely important, because without the angle there is no reference. Now from these two trigonometric ratios we can actually have a new ratio called the tan ratio, which is nothing but made from sine and cos. So tan ratio of the angle x means the sine ratio of the angle x divided by the cos ratio of the angle x. So if you write O by h, opposite by hypotenuse, divided by a by h, adjacent by hypotenuse, the h and h cancels and it turns out to be opposite by adjacent, or TOA. So you can remember it like so ka TOA. Sine ratio of the angle x, cos ratio of the angle x, tan ratio of the angle x. So you have to remember the tan ratio actually is not part of the basic trigonometric ratio, the native trigonometric ratio, because tan ratio is made from the sine ratio and the cos ratio. So this is the trigonometric ratios and where they come. So the symbol, the mathematical symbol of the trigonometric ratios are coming from the at right angle triangle. But actually the meaning of the words, the word sine and the word cos, they're actually the study of a circle. So trigonometry is actually, although it deals with triangles, but actually it originated from a circle. So let's see a circle here. Now in this circle, if we think about, this is the center, so we know this is the radius. So this is the radius of the circle. Now this thing that joins two points on the circumference, that thing is called a chord. So this is a chord. Now from the center, this is a radius. From the center, if a right angled, a perpendicular is drawn, then this side, this chord would be bisected into two. So by definition, sine, suppose this is the angle x and this is the radius r, so let's call this unit radius, meaning the radius is 1. If this is the situation, then sine x is actually half of a chord. Half of a chord, that is equals to sine x. That means this length here, which is half of a chord, this is sine x, and this one here, which is the perpendicular distance from the center to the half chord, this is cos x. So cos x is actually the perpendicular drawn from the center to the half chord, so that is actually cos x. So that means this thing, this length is actually cos x. So in terms of circle, sine x is half the length of a chord and cos x is the perpendicular from the center to the half chord. So this is the definition of sine x and cos x is coming from the circle, originally coming from the circle. Now if you think of this right angle triangle, so this is a right angle triangle, if you think of this right angle triangle, this looks like this. Now if we consider this angle to be this angle x, so sine x here would be the ratio of the opposite. Now if this is the angle, the opposite of this angle is this, so this would be the opposite and this would be the hypotenuse. Now the hypotenuse is the radius 1, so it would be opposite by 1. So sine x would be equal to the opposite, which this length. So this length, the half of the chord, would be called sine x. And similarly, if we consider this angle to be x, and if we take the cos ratio of this angle, so this would be the adjacent and this would be the hypotenuse, which is the radius 1. So cos of this angle x would be this perpendicular divided by 1, adjacent by hypotenuse, adjacent by 1, it would be equal to adjacent. So cos x would be equal to the perpendicular distance. So for starting trigonometry, we need to know what trigonometric ratios are and where did the name come from. Next, the thing to look at are the trigonometric angles, how the angles are defined.